My wife emptied my cancer treatment money to pay for her son's third attempt at college, so I emptied their closets and kicked them out. When I married Janet 6 years ago, she came with a 20-year-old son named Tyler. He'd already dropped out of college twice, both times after partying away his first semester. Janet paid for both attempts, drained her savings, sold her jewelry, even borrowed from her sister. When we got married, I made it clear I wouldn't fund Tyler's education. He needed to work, save money, prove he was serious. Janet agreed, said she understood. We started building our life together. I worked construction, made good money, put away $1,000 every month into our emergency fund. Janet worked part-time at a dentist's office, contributed what she could. After 5 years, we had $42,000 saved. That money was sacred. It was for real emergencies like job loss, medical bills, house repairs. We both had access, but promised never to touch it without discussing it first. Tyler spent those years doing nothing. He'd work restaurant jobs for a few weeks, then quit because managers were mean. He'd sleep until noon, play video games all night, smoke weed in Janet's basement where he still lived. Janet babied him, made his meals, did his laundry, gave him spending money from her paycheck. I stayed out of it. Not my kid, not my problem. Then 8 months ago, I started feeling sick. Constant fatigue, losing weight, bruising easily. Went to the doctor, got blood work done, leukemia. Treatable but expensive. Insurance would cover most of it, but not everything. The doctor said out-of-pocket would be around $30,000 for the full treatment. That's why we had the emergency fund. I came home and told Janet. She cried, said everything would be fine, we had the money saved. Treatment started the next week. First round went well, insurance covered their part, we paid our portion from checking. I was scheduled for 6 rounds total. After my second treatment, I went to transfer money from our emergency fund for the next payment. The account had $400, from $42,000 to $400. I called the bank thinking it was fraud. No, they said. Janet had withdrawn everything in cashier's checks over 3 days, 2 weeks ago. I drove home in shock. Janet was cooking dinner like nothing happened. I asked about the money. She went white, started crying immediately. Tyler had gotten into a private art college, not a real college, one of those for-profit places that accepts everyone. $40,000 for 1 year. He promised this time was different. He was ready to focus. She couldn't let him down again. She was his mother. She actually said she couldn't let him down while I had cancer and needed that money for treatment. I asked how she could do this without talking to me. She said I would have said no. Of course I would have said no. I was fighting cancer, and we needed that money to save my life. She said Tyler's future was important too, that he deserved a chance at success, that maybe my treatment wasn't as expensive as the doctor said. She really suggested my oncologist was exaggerating the cost while her son was at a fake art school drawing stick figures. Tyler came upstairs then, heard us arguing, asked what the problem was. When I told him his mother stole my cancer treatment money for his school, he shrugged, said I was being selfish, that education was an investment. This kid who'd never finished anything in his life was calling me selfish for wanting to live. I packed a bag and left that night, stayed with my brother James. Janet called crying, saying I was overreacting, that we could figure something out, maybe get a loan. My credit was shot from medical bills. No bank would loan us anything. She knew that. My brother helped me find a lawyer. Divorce papers were filed within a week. Janet tried to fight it, said I was abandoning her in a difficult time. The judge didn't see it that way when he heard she'd stolen cancer treatment funds. The divorce was final last month. I got the house since I'd paid the entire down payment and mortgage. Janet and Tyler moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. Tyler dropped out of his fake college after 1 semester, said the teachers didn't understand his artistic vision. He's back in Janet's basement, except now it's just a corner of their living room. Janet called yesterday begging for money. They're behind on rent. Tyler can't find a job because nowhere appreciates his talents. I reminded her she chose Tyler's 3rd failed attempt at college over my life. That's when she said something that made me drop my phone. She said, "I am pregnant." I drop my phone on James's couch and just stare at the wall for a solid minute trying to do the math in my head. Janet and I separated 7 months ago, when I found out about the stolen money. The divorce was final 4 weeks ago. She moved into that apartment with Tyler about a month back. If she's actually pregnant right now, the timing puts conception somewhere around when we were still technically married, but definitely not living together or sleeping together. Either this is the most desperate manipulation move she's ever pulled, or she's pregnant with someone else's baby and trying to pin it on me for money. Both options make me want to throw up. I pick up my phone and call James before I can spiral into full panic mode. He answers on the second ring, and I just say I need him to come over right now. He must hear something in my voice because he doesn't ask questions, just says he'll be there in 20 minutes. I spend those 20 minutes pacing around his apartment trying to figure out if Janet is evil enough to fake a pregnancy or stupid enough to actually be pregnant during a divorce. Knowing her track record with Tyler, both seem possible. When James walks in, he takes one look at my face and goes straight to his kitchen to make coffee. We sit at his kitchen table and I tell him about Janet's call. He's quiet for a long time, then asks if I think she's lying. I don't know, I tell him. With Janet, I never know anymore. She stole $40,000 from my cancer fund, so lying about a pregnancy doesn't seem like a stretch. But James points out that if she is pregnant, we need to figure out if it's mine or someone else's, because both create different kinds of problems. If it's mine, I'm stuck dealing with her forever through a kid. If it's not mine and she's trying to claim it is, that's fraud and I need to protect myself legally. Either way, this is about to get even messier than it already is. The next morning, I force myself to go to my follow-up appointment with Dr. Hendricks, even though my brain feels like it's been put through a blender. The waiting room smells like antiseptic and old magazines. I sit there filling out forms asking about my stress levels and sleep quality, and I almost laugh because how do I even begin to explain the past 24 hours? When Dr. Hendricks calls me back, he's smiling, which seems like a good sign. He pulls up my latest blood work on his computer and tells me the treatment worked better than they expected. I'm in remission. My counts look excellent. If I keep up with regular monitoring every 3 months, my prognosis is really good. I should feel like jumping up and celebrating. Instead, I just feel numb, like I survived one nightmare only to walk straight into another one. He's talking about 5-year survival rates and maintenance care, and all I can think about is Janet's voice saying she's pregnant. Dr. Hendricks stops mid-sentence and asks if I'm okay. I realize I haven't been listening to anything he said for the past 2 minutes. I tell him I'm sorry. I'm just distracted. He leans back in his chair and asks what's going on. So I tell him about Janet's pregnancy claim. He's quiet for a moment, then says something that actually cuts through the fog in my head. He tells me that stress can trigger cancer to come back. That I need to protect my health by setting really firm boundaries, no matter what happens with the baby situation. His clinical way of putting it helps somehow. I can't let Janet's chaos pull me back into her mess. I survived cancer. I can't let her destroy that by dragging me into more drama. I leave the hospital and drive straight to Peter's office because I need to know what this pregnancy means legally. His secretary waves me in, and Peter looks up from his computer with his usual calm expression. I sit down and just lay it out. Janet called. She's pregnant. She says it's mine. I don't know if I believe her. Peter doesn't even look surprised. He probably sees this kind of thing all the time. He explains that if the baby turns out to be mine, I'll have child support obligations based on my income. But the divorce is final, and Janet can't use a pregnancy to reverse it or claim any more of my assets. The house is mine, my savings are mine, everything is settled. He recommends I insist on a paternity test immediately after the baby is born, before I sign anything or make any commitments. Don't go on the birth certificate without proof, he says. Don't give her any money before the test results come back. Protect yourself first. Then he drops another bomb. He points out that Janet was living with me until 7 months ago. If she's pregnant now, the conception timeline overlaps with when we were still married but separated, which means legally I'll be presumed the father, unless we prove otherwise with DNA testing. Pennsylvania law assumes the husband is the father if conception happened during marriage. I leave his office feeling like the legal system is designed specifically to trap people in messes they're trying to escape from. Janet calls me 3 times that afternoon and I ignore every single one. She leaves voicemails and I can hear her crying in them, talking about how scared she is and how alone she feels. Part of me feels guilty because I'm not a monster and I don't want anyone to suffer. But the bigger part of me remembers her standing in our kitchen telling me Tyler's fake college was more important than my cancer treatment. Remembers her saying maybe the doctor was lying about how much treatment would cost. Remembers Tyler calling me selfish for wanting to live. That part of me deletes the voicemails without listening to all of them. James comes home from work and finds me staring at my phone. He asks if I'm thinking about calling her back, and I admit that, yeah, part of me feels bad. He sits down next to me and reminds me that guilt is exactly what Janet counts on to manipulate people. That she's probably counting on me feeling sorry for her so I'll cave and give her money or let her move back in or whatever her endgame is. He's right, and I know it. I put my phone on silent and shove it in my pocket. The next day, I go back to work for the first time since finishing treatment. I'm nervous because I've been gone for months and I don't know if I'll have the strength to keep up anymore. But when I pull into the construction site parking lot, my whole crew is waiting by the trailer. They start clapping when I get out of my truck and I feel my throat get tight. My foreman walks over and shakes my hand, tells me it's good to have me back. Then one of the guys hands me an envelope. Inside is $1,800 in cash. They took up a collection while I was sick, he explains. Everyone chipped in to help with medical bills. I almost start crying right there in the dirt parking lot because these guys barely know me outside of work. We don't hang out on weekends or go to each other's houses, but they showed up when it mattered. They gave me money when my own wife was stealing from me. I managed to thank them without completely losing it, but it's close. My foreman pulls me aside before everyone gets back to work. He tells me to take it easy for a few weeks, maybe just do equipment checks and paperwork while I rebuild my strength. No heavy lifting, no climbing, nothing that'll wear me out too fast. Then he mentions that they held my position while I was gone, and I'm getting back pay for all the time I was on medical leave thanks to the union contract. The check should hit my account by Friday. For the first time in months, I feel like maybe things can actually get better, like maybe I can dig myself out of this hole and build something good again. I spend the day doing light work and catching up with the guys, and by the time I clock out, I'm exhausted but in a good way. Like I actually did something productive instead of just surviving. That evening, I'm back at James's apartment heating up leftover pizza when someone knocks on the door. James looks through the peephole and his whole body goes tense. It's Janet. I can see her through the door and she's not showing yet. Just looks like regular Janet in jeans and a sweater. She starts talking before James even fully opens the door, begging to talk to me for just 5 minutes. I tell James it's okay, and step out onto the doorstep where he can hear everything. I'm not letting her inside and I'm not going anywhere private with her. She looks terrible, like she hasn't slept in days. She tells me she's 8 weeks pregnant and completely terrified because she has no money for doctor visits or vitamins or anything a pregnant person needs. She's looking at me with those big sad eyes that used to work on me before she stole my cancer money. I look at her standing there on the doorstep and ask the question straight out. Is the baby mine? She nods fast and says yes. Swears she hasn't been with anyone else since we separated. Her voice gets higher when she talks, and she puts her hand on her stomach like that proves something. I tell her I need a paternity test before I believe anything she says. She steps back and her face goes red. She actually looks hurt. Says she can't believe I don't trust her after everything we've been through together. I remind her she stole $42,000 of my cancer treatment money without asking me. She stole money I needed to stay alive. The lack of self-awareness is crazy, but I don't back down. Paternity test or nothing. She wipes her eyes and changes direction completely. She says Tyler is falling apart from guilt about the college money. He wants to apologize to me, wants to make things right. I tell her Tyler is 26 years old and called me selfish for wanting cancer treatment. I have zero interest in his apologies now. She starts crying harder and says I'm punishing her for trying to help her son. Like taking $40,000 was just a normal parenting choice. Like she had to pick between her son's fake art school and my actual life, and picked the art school. James must hear the conversation getting louder because he steps outside and stands next to me. He tells Janet firmly that she needs to leave. I'm recovering from cancer and don't need this kind of stress showing up at the apartment. Janet turns on him fast. She calls him a bad influence who turned me against my family. Says he's been poisoning me against her since I moved in. James actually laughs at that. He says no, stealing cancer money turned me against her. She needs to accept responsibility for her own choices instead of blaming everyone else. Janet looks between us, and I can see her realizing the tears aren't working. She walks back to her car without saying anything else. I watch her drive away and feel completely exhausted. My whole body feels heavy. James puts his hand on my shoulder and we go back inside. He makes dinner while I sit at the kitchen table just staring at nothing. We talk about how I need to prepare for the possibility the baby actually is mine. What that would mean legally, financially, practically. James offers to help with money if it comes to that. He says he's got savings and I'm his brother. That offer means more than I can explain. The next week, I focus on getting back to work and rebuilding my strength. I deliberately don't answer when Janet calls or texts. She leaves voicemails that I delete without listening. Then she starts emailing me. The first email has an ultrasound photo attached. Could be anyone's pregnancy photo from the internet for all I know. She writes that I need to acknowledge my responsibility to our child. I forward the email to Peter so there's a legal record of her harassing me. She sends 3 more emails that week with more ultrasound pictures and long paragraphs about how scared she is. I forward all of them to Peter and don't respond to any. My phone rings on Friday afternoon and I don't recognize the number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. It's Marley, Janet's sister. She apologizes right away for calling out of nowhere. Says she's been thinking about me since the divorce. She apologizes for lending Janet money for Tyler's first college attempt years ago. She says she's watched Janet enable Tyler for years and feels guilty for contributing to that pattern. I tell her I appreciate the call, but I can't get involved in Janet's family stuff anymore. I need to focus on my own health and life. Marley says she understands completely. Then she surprises me by saying something else. She doesn't think the baby is mine. She saw Janet at a restaurant 3 months ago with a guy from her dental office. They were holding hands and kissing. Janet made Marley promise not to tell anyone. This information hits me hard. It means Janet is either lying about paternity or genuinely doesn't know who the father is. Either way, it changes everything. I thank Marley for telling me and we hang up. I call Peter immediately and tell him what Marley said. He says it makes our position stronger that paternity testing is mandatory. He also says I should write down everything Marley told me in case Janet tries to claim child support before the baby is born. Document dates, times, exactly what Marley said. The whole situation feels more and more like a bad TV show I never wanted to be in. 2 weeks go by and I'm at the construction site eating lunch with my crew. We're sitting on the tailgate of someone's truck eating sandwiches when I see Janet's car pull into the parking lot. She gets out, and I can see a small bump under her shirt now. She walks straight toward us, and I feel my face get hot. She's bringing this drama to my workplace in front of my coworkers. Everyone gets quiet and uncomfortable. Janet stops in front of me, and her voice is loud enough that the whole crew can hear. She says I'm abandoning my child. Says what kind of man walks away from his pregnant wife. My foreman looks at me, and I can tell he doesn't know what to do. I stand up and walk toward Janet's car. She follows me and I make sure we're far enough away that my crew can't hear. I tell her firmly that showing up at my job is harassment. If she does it again, I'll get a restraining order. She breaks down crying again, says she's desperate because her and Tyler are about to be evicted for missing rent. They owe 2 months and the landlord filed papers. I feel a small flicker of sympathy, but I push it away. She created this situation by stealing from me. She keeps crying and then starts talking faster, admitting that Tyler hasn't worked a single day since he dropped out. He just sits in their apartment playing video games from the moment he wakes up until 3 in the morning. She's been covering rent, food, utilities, everything on her part-time dental office paycheck, and it's not enough. I watch her wipe her face and I feel nothing but tired anger. I tell her flat out that Tyler is her responsibility, not mine, and she needs to kick him out so she can afford to live. She needs to tell him to get a job in his own place like every other adult. Her face changes completely. She stares at me like I just suggested she murder her own child. She says she could never kick Tyler out when he's struggling this much. He's her son, and he needs her support. I point out that he's not struggling. He's lazy and entitled, and she's making it worse by letting him coast. She's enabling him into being a failure for his entire life. She calls me cruel and cold-hearted. Says I don't understand what it's like to be a parent. She walks back to her car, and I notice something I didn't see before. She's driving a different car than the beat-up sedan she had when we were married. This one is newer, maybe 2 or 3 years old. A silver SUV that looks freshly washed. She gets in and drives away without looking back. I stand there thinking about that car because it doesn't make sense. She's claiming to be broke and about to get evicted, but she's driving a vehicle that costs money every month. I get back to the construction site and finish my shift, but I can't stop thinking about that SUV. When I get to James's place that evening, I mention it to him. He pulls out his laptop and starts searching. Takes him maybe 20 minutes to find the information. Janet financed that vehicle 3 months ago through a dealership across town. The monthly payment is probably somewhere around $400 based on the model and year. James shakes his head and closes his laptop. He says Janet is still making terrible financial decisions and then expecting other people to bail her out of the consequences. She's paying for a car she can't afford while claiming she can't pay rent. I feel vindicated but also exhausted because this is exactly the pattern that destroyed our marriage. She makes choices based on what she wants in the moment without thinking about what it costs. My next oncology appointment is 3 days later. I sit in the waiting room filling out the standard forms about how I've been feeling. Dr. Hendricks calls me back and does the usual checks. He comments that I look stressed and asks if everything is okay. I tell him about Janet showing up at my workplace and the whole pregnancy situation. He listens and then reminds me that my recovery depends heavily on keeping my stress levels down. High stress can trigger relapses in some patients. He suggests I seriously consider getting a restraining order for my own health. The idea of needing legal protection from my ex-wife feels crazy, but also necessary. He writes something in my chart and tells me to take care of myself mentally as much as physically. I leave the appointment feeling like my life has become something I don't recognize. I spend the entire weekend doing research on paternity rights and child support laws. I sit at James's kitchen table with my laptop open, reading through legal websites and forum posts from other men in similar situations. If the baby is mine, I'll have financial obligations. But I can insist on custody arrangements that don't give Janet total control. I can demand specific visitation schedules and involvement in major decisions. If the baby isn't mine, I need to protect myself from being legally trapped into supporting another man's child. Some states automatically list the husband as the father if a baby is born within a certain time after divorce. I take notes and save links to show Peter later. I need to be prepared for whatever happens. Peter calls me Monday afternoon while I'm at work. I step away from the crew to take the call. He tells me that Janet's lawyer contacted him over the weekend, asking for emergency spousal support. They're claiming extreme hardship and demanding I help with her living expenses. Peter actually laughed when he read the request. He reminded them that Janet stole my cancer treatment money, and that's documented in all the divorce proceedings. The judge already ruled that Janet gets nothing from the settlement, and nothing has changed to justify revisiting that decision. He told them to stop wasting everyone's time. I thank Peter and hang up feeling a small sense of satisfaction that the legal system is working the way it should. Janet's texts start coming more frequently over the next few days. She sends me messages about needing money for rent, for food, for doctor appointments. She sends me Venmo requests for specific amounts with notes attached. One says, "Your baby needs a home." Another says, "Prenatal vitamins $47. I screenshot every single message and request and forward them all to Peter. He responds saying this kind of manipulation could actually help our case if she ever tries to claim I'm an unfit father. She's creating a digital record of her attempts to extort money from me using a pregnancy that might not even be mine. I keep not responding to any of her messages because engaging with her just encourages more of the same behavior. Tyler texts me for the first time ever on Thursday night. It's a long message that I have to scroll through. He says he's sorry for everything and never meant for things to get this bad. He claims he's been looking for work, but everywhere he applies wants experience he doesn't have. He says he understands if I hate him, but he hopes someday I can forgive him. I read the message twice and then put my phone down without responding. Tyler's problems are not my responsibility, and his apology doesn't change what he and his mother did to me. He had no problem calling me selfish when I had cancer. Now he wants sympathy because his choices have consequences. Marley calls me Friday evening sounding worried. She tells me Janet got fired from the dental office. Apparently Janet took money from the petty cash drawer. When the office manager confronted her, Janet said it was just a loan she planned to pay back at her next paycheck. The manager called it theft and fired her on the spot. Now Janet has no income at all. Marley sounds genuinely concerned about what Janet will do next. She asks if I've heard from Janet, and I tell her about the constant texts and Venmo requests. Marley sighs and says she's worried Janet is going to do something desperate. I don't know what to say to that because Janet's desperation is her own creation. I sit with James that night drinking beer on his back porch. I tell him everything Marley said about the firing. I admit I feel a complicated mix of feelings about the whole situation. Part of me feels vindicated that Janet is facing real consequences for her pattern of bad choices. But another part of me feels concerned because if that baby is mine, then it doesn't deserve to suffer for its mother's mistakes. A baby didn't ask to be born into this mess. James thinks for a while and then says, I can have compassion for a difficult situation without making myself responsible for fixing it. If the baby turns out to be mine, I'll step up and do what's right. But I can't save Janet from herself and I shouldn't try. She needs to figure out how to be an adult and make better decisions. That's not my job anymore. The next morning, Marley calls while I'm getting ready for work. She sounds stressed and tells me the landlord served Janet and Tyler with an eviction notice yesterday. They have 2 weeks to get out because they're 3 months behind on rent. Janet apparently told Marley she plans to move in temporarily until she finds work, but Marley lives in a small 2-bedroom house and really doesn't want Tyler there. Marley says the family drama is getting worse and she's caught in the middle of it. I tell her I appreciate the heads up, but I'm staying out of it completely. She understands and says she just wanted me to know what's coming. 3 days later, my phone rings from a number I don't recognize. I answer thinking it might be work-related. Janet's voice comes through hysterical and crying. She's begging me to let her and Tyler stay in my house temporarily, just until she finds work and gets back on her feet. I tell her absolutely not. That house is my home and my sanctuary after everything she did to me. She starts screaming that I'm letting my pregnant ex-wife become homeless out of spite, that I'm a cruel person who cares more about revenge than doing the right thing. I can hear Tyler in the background telling her to hang up, that I'm not worth it. I hang up without saying anything else. My hands are shaking from anger. I immediately call Peter and ask about changing my locks and making sure Janet has no legal claim to enter my property. He confirms the house is solely mine according to the divorce decree, and Janet has 0 rights to it. He recommends I install security cameras in case she tries to show up and create a scene or damage something. The idea that I need cameras to protect myself from my ex-wife feels crazy, but Peter says desperate people do desperate things. That weekend, James comes over to help me install cameras at the front door, back door, and driveway. We also change all the locks on every entrance. The whole process takes about 4 hours. James comments that it's really sad I have to protect myself from someone I once loved enough to marry. I stop what I'm doing and realize something. I don't love Janet anymore. I'm not even sure I hate her at this point. I just want to be free of the chaos she creates everywhere she goes. The anger is fading into something more like tired indifference. James nods and says that's probably healthy, that holding on to strong feelings either way keeps you connected to someone. Monday afternoon, Marley sends me a long text. Janet and Tyler moved into her place over the weekend, but it's already a complete disaster. Tyler treats her house like a hotel. He leaves dirty dishes everywhere, eats all her food without asking, takes long showers that use up the hot water, and makes 0 effort to help with anything or look for work. He stays up all night playing games on his phone and sleeps until 2 in the afternoon. Marley says she's already counting the days until she can kick them out without feeling guilty. I don't respond because there's nothing I can say that would help. 3 weeks pass with no contact from Janet, and it feels like a gift. I focus on my job and my health. My strength is coming back more each day. I'm working full shifts now without getting exhausted. The construction crew treats me like I never left. I'm also slowly rebuilding my savings account, putting away $300 each paycheck. It's not the $1,000 I used to save, but it's something. The hospital financial counselor, Deepika Foster, calls and asks me to come in for a meeting. I'm worried it's bad news about my bills, but she's actually smiling when I sit down. She went through my case and got me approved for a hardship program. My remaining medical debt gets reduced by 40%, and she sets up a payment plan I can actually afford. $200 a month for the next 3 years. I almost cry from relief because I thought I'd be paying these bills for the next decade. Life starts to feel manageable again for the first time in months. Then on a Saturday morning, I'm drinking coffee on my porch when Janet's car pulls into my driveway. She's visibly more pregnant now, maybe 4 or 5 months along based on the size of her stomach. Tyler is sitting in the passenger seat, but he stays in the car. Janet walks up to the porch slowly. She's calmer than the last time we talked. She asks if we can talk like adults about the future. Every part of me wants to say no and send her away, but I let her sit on the porch steps while Tyler stays in the car. She starts by saying she's made terrible mistakes, and she understands why I divorced her. She's not asking me to take her back or forgive her, but she says the baby deserves a father who's present in its life. She's not asking for money or help with her situation, just asking me to consider being involved if the paternity test proves I'm the father. Her reasonable tone throws me off completely. This is the first time she's approached me without manipulation or hysteria or guilt trips. I tell her I'll absolutely be involved if the baby is mine, but that involvement means custody arrangements and child support through legal channels. Not me rescuing her from her bad decisions or letting her move back into my life. She nods and says that's fair. Then she admits something that surprises me. She's been seeing someone from her old job at the dental office. They were together around the same time we were still living together, but separated. There's a chance he's the father instead of me. The honesty is unexpected. It somehow makes everything more real instead of just another manipulation attempt. I ask why she's telling me this now. She says because she's tired of lying and tired of making everything worse. She wants to do at least one thing right. She asks if I'd be willing to do a prenatal paternity test instead of waiting until the baby is born. I agree immediately because knowing sooner will help everyone plan better. She tears up and thanks me. She says she knows she doesn't deserve my cooperation after everything. I don't disagree with her, but I also recognize something important. Punishing Janet by extension punishes an innocent child who didn't ask to be born into this mess. Whatever my feelings about Janet are, they can't affect how I handle this situation with the baby. We set up the test appointment over the phone right there on the porch while Janet waits. The clinic can do it in 2 weeks and they need her blood and my cheek swab. The cost is $800, which hits harder than I expect. I tell Janet I'll split it with her, even though every dollar feels like I'm rewarding her bad choices. She thanks me quietly, and I can tell she knows I don't have to help at all. Later that night, Peter calls to check in, and I mention splitting the test cost. He goes quiet for a second, then says, I'm being too generous with someone who stole from me. I tell him I need to know the truth, and $400 is worth that peace of mind. He doesn't argue, but I can hear in his voice that he thinks Janet is still manipulating me somehow. Maybe she is, but I'm doing this for me, not for her. Tyler gets out of the car while Janet is still sitting on my porch steps. He walks up slow like he's approaching something dangerous. His hands are in his pockets and he won't look at me directly. He stops a few feet away and finally makes eye contact. He says he's sorry for calling me selfish when I had cancer. The words come out stiff like he practiced them, but there's something different in his face. He looks ashamed for the first time since I've known him. He says he was immature and didn't understand what he was asking his mom to do. Then he tells me he enrolled in a trade school program for HVAC repair. He's 3 weeks in and hasn't missed a day. He says he's done chasing stupid dreams about art school and wants to actually build something real. His voice cracks a little when he says it, and I almost believe him. I don't let my guard down completely because Tyler has disappointed everyone too many times. I tell him actions matter more than apologies. If he's serious about trade school, he needs to stick with it and finish. He nods and says he knows that now. He mentions living in Marley's tiny house sharing a room with his pregnant mom has been a wake-up call. The kid finally hit bottom hard enough to maybe learn something. I don't say much else because I'm not interested in bonding with Tyler. But I also recognize that people can change if they actually want to. He's young enough to turn things around if this time is different. He walks back to the car and Janet stands up to leave. She thanks me again for agreeing to the test and drives away. I watch them go and feel tired from the whole interaction. The next 2 weeks drag by like I'm waiting for test results that will decide my entire future. I go to work and focus on the job, but my mind keeps wandering to that baby. I catch myself hoping it's not mine, which makes me feel guilty. What kind of person hopes a baby isn't theirs? But I also know the truth. Being tied to Janet forever through a child will mess up the fresh start I'm trying to build. Every time I think about co-parenting with her for 18 years, I feel trapped. James comes over one evening and finds me staring at nothing. He asks what's wrong and I tell him I'm hoping for a result that makes me feel like a bad person. He sits down and reminds me I've already survived worse than this. He says whatever the test shows, I'll handle it because I'm stronger than I think. His confidence helps more than he knows. I sleep better that night than I have in weeks. The results come in the mail on a Tuesday afternoon. I stare at the envelope for a full minute before opening it. My hands shake a little as I pull out the paper. The words swim in front of my eyes at first. Then they come into focus. Probability of paternity 0%. I'm not the father. The baby is not mine. I have to read it 3 times to make sure I'm understanding correctly. Relief hits me so hard I have to sit down on my couch. My whole body feels lighter, like someone removed a weight I didn't know I was carrying. But right behind the relief comes something unexpected. Sadness for this kid who's going to grow up with Janet's chaos and Tyler as a brother. The baby didn't ask for any of this. I sit there holding the paper and feeling both free and guilty at the same time. It's a strange combination that I don't know how to process. I call Janet to tell her the results before she gets her own copy in the mail. The phone rings 4 times and I almost hang up. She answers, sounding nervous. I tell her straight out that I'm not the father. She goes quiet for so long I think she hung up. Then she says she figured as much based on the timing. Her voice sounds flat and tired. She asks if I hate her, and the question catches me off guard. I tell her honestly that I don't hate her. I just feel sorry for her because she keeps making choices that hurt herself and everyone around her. She starts crying, and I let her because there's nothing left to say. We sit in silence with her crying on the other end until she finally hangs up without saying goodbye. I put my phone down and feel empty instead of victorious. Peter calls me the next morning after I email him a copy of the results. He confirms that the paternity test legally cuts any remaining connection between me and Janet's situation. I have no financial obligations and no custody concerns. There's no reason for me to maintain contact with her at all. He congratulates me on being free and clear. His voice sounds genuinely happy for me. I thank him for all his help through the divorce and this mess. But the victory feels more complicated than I expected. I thought I'd feel nothing but relief. Instead, I feel relieved and sad and guilty all mixed together. Peter doesn't seem to notice my lack of enthusiasm. He says I should celebrate and move on with my life. I tell him I will, and we hang up. Marley calls that afternoon, which surprises me. She thanks me for handling the paternity test properly, because now Janet has to face reality. She says Janet needs to contact the actual father and stop living in denial. Then Marley drops information I wasn't expecting. The father is a guy from the dental office where Janet used to work. He's married with kids of his own. He's not happy about the pregnancy at all, according to Marley. Janet's mess just keeps getting worse and messier. Marley sounds frustrated and tired, like she's been dealing with Janet's drama for too long. I tell her I appreciate the update, but I'm staying out of it now. She understands and says she's glad I'm free of the situation. We say goodbye, and I feel grateful to be outside of Janet's chaos. Tyler texts me a few days later. It's a long message saying he's sorry for everything. He says he's actually sticking with trade school and hasn't missed a single day. He mentions watching his mom's life fall apart because of bad decisions taught him what not to do. The text sounds sincere, but I've heard Tyler make promises before. I respond briefly, wishing him luck. I actually mean it because Tyler is young enough to change if he really wants to. He thanks me for responding and says he won't bother me again. I appreciate that he's respecting my boundaries finally. Maybe hitting rock bottom was what he needed to grow up. I hope the trade school works out for him. My 6-month cancer follow-up appointment happens the next week. I sit in Dr. Hendrix's office feeling nervous like I always do before these checkups. He reviews my blood work and scans with a smile on his face. He says I'm still in remission with excellent blood markers. Everything looks great and I should expect a normal lifespan if I keep taking care of myself. He shakes my hand and tells me I'm doing everything right. Walking out of that appointment, I realize something important. I survived both cancer and the betrayal that could have killed me. Janet tried to take my cancer treatment money and I still made it through. The divorce almost broke me, and I'm still standing. I get in my car and sit there for a minute, feeling genuinely hopeful about the future for the first time in months. A week later, Deepika from the hospital billing calls with news that makes me sit down. She tells me I got approved for a financial hardship program that cuts my remaining medical debt by 60%. Between that reduction and my payment plan, I'll be debt-free in 3 years instead of 10. I thank her multiple times because this feels like actual breathing room after months of drowning. She says I qualified because of the divorce situation and my income level, and she's glad she could help. After hanging up, I realize these small victories are adding up to something that feels like real recovery instead of just survival. 2 weeks pass and I start thinking about dating again, which feels both exciting and scary. I download a few apps one evening and stare at the blank profile section trying to figure out what to say. James comes over for dinner and I show him the apps as a joke. He looks at my empty profile and laughs, saying I should lead with cancer survivor, recently divorced, drama-free, and see who responds. The fact that I can laugh about my situation means I'm healing in ways that go beyond just physical health. I actually write an honest profile mentioning my health journey and recent divorce without going into details. Within a week, I get some matches and a few conversations start. Nothing serious yet, but it feels good to be moving forward. My foreman calls me into his office on a Friday, and I worry something went wrong. Instead, he tells me they're promoting me to crew supervisor with a significant raise. He says I've been reliable and skilled for years, and they value loyalty, especially after I came back strong following treatment. The extra money means I can rebuild my emergency fund faster and actually start planning a future beyond just paying bills. I shake his hand and thank him, feeling like maybe hard work actually does pay off sometimes. The crew congratulates me at the end of the day, and a few guys joke about me being the boss now. I tell them nothing changes except my paycheck, which gets some laughs. That weekend I'm shopping for groceries when I turn a corner and nearly walk into Janet. She's noticeably pregnant now, probably 6 months along based on the size of her belly. We both freeze for a second, then have an awkward conversation in the produce section. She tells me the baby's father is involved now, and they're trying to make it work. She looks tired but not as desperate as the last time I saw her. I wish her luck and mean it because holding on to anger takes energy I'd rather spend on my own life. She thanks me and we go separate directions down different aisles. The encounter doesn't ruin my day like I thought it might. Marley calls me a few days later sounding shocked but happy. She tells me Tyler actually completed his first semester of trade school with good grades and got an apprenticeship with an HVAC company. She can't believe he stuck with something and didn't quit after 2 weeks like usual. She says maybe hitting rock bottom was what he needed to finally grow up. I tell her I'm glad for him because everyone deserves a chance to change, even if it takes some people longer than others. She agrees and says she hopes he keeps it up because Janet needs him to be independent with a baby coming. We chat for a few more minutes about other family stuff, then say goodbye. I hang up feeling genuinely happy that Tyler might be turning his life around. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, a friend from work sets me up with someone he knows. Her name is Lisa, and she's a nurse at the hospital where I had my treatments. We meet for coffee on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm nervous but honest about everything I've been through. I tell her about the cancer, the divorce, the stolen money, all of it. She listens without judging and says everyone has baggage, mine just happens to be well documented. She appreciates the honesty and tells me about her own divorce from 5 years ago. We talk for 3 hours and agree to meet again next week. The second date goes even better and we start seeing each other regularly. She understands medical trauma in ways most people don't because she sees it every day at work. We take things slow because neither of us wants to rush into anything serious too fast. A month into dating Lisa, I decide to sell some tools I don't need anymore. I post them online and make about $800 from stuff just sitting in my garage. I use that money to take a weekend trip to the mountains, something I haven't done in years. Lisa can't come because she's working, but encourages me to go and have time to myself. I drive up Friday after work and spend Saturday hiking trails I used to visit before I got sick. Standing on a ridge looking at the view, I realize I'm genuinely happy for the first time since my diagnosis. Cancer tried to kill me, and betrayal tried to destroy me, but I'm still here, still standing, still building a life worth living. The mountain air feels clean in my lungs, and I take a photo to remember this moment. 2 months later, Marley texts me that Janet had her baby. She sends a photo even though I didn't ask for one. It's a girl, and she looks healthy with a full head of dark hair. I stare at the photo for a minute and feel nothing but mild relief that the child is okay and gratitude that she's not my responsibility. That probably sounds cold, but it's honest, and I've learned that being honest with myself is how I survive. I text Marley back saying I'm glad everyone is healthy, then delete the photo. Lisa asks who texted and I tell her about Janet's baby. She squeezes my hand and says I handled that well by keeping appropriate boundaries. Lisa and I have been dating for 3 months when I decide it's time for her to meet James. I invite them both over for dinner at my place on a Saturday night. James shows up early and immediately starts grilling Lisa about her intentions when she arrives. She laughs and handles his questions with good humor, saying she's not going anywhere because she likes dating a man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to set boundaries. James relaxes after that, and they get along great over dinner. He pulls me aside while Lisa is in the bathroom and says, I deserve this happiness after everything I went through. His approval means more than I expected it to. The 3 of us end up playing cards until late, and Lisa fits into my life in a way that feels natural and right. Tyler reaches out one final time through a text message that surprises me. He tells me he got his HVAC certification and landed a full-time job with benefits. He's moving into his own apartment next month and says he's finally becoming the adult he should have been years ago. The text is short and respectful, not asking for anything or making excuses. I text back congratulating him and saying I'm glad he stuck with the trade school. I mean it genuinely because his success isn't about me, it's about him finally taking responsibility for his own life. He thanks me for responding and says he won't bother me again unless I want to stay in touch. I tell him good luck with the new job and apartment. We leave it at that and I feel okay with how things ended between us. 9 months after Tyler's text, I log into my bank account and stare at the screen showing 0 balance on my medical debt. The final payment went through yesterday, and I'm officially debt-free a full year ahead of schedule. My promotion to crew supervisor came with a 20% raise, and I put every extra dollar toward the hospital bills instead of buying anything I didn't absolutely need. I text James and Lisa asking if they're free for dinner tonight because I want to celebrate something big. They both respond within minutes saying yes. We meet at a steakhouse I couldn't afford 6 months ago, and I tell them the news over appetizers. James raises his beer and says, here's to survival, not just from cancer but from everything that tried to destroy me. Lisa lifts her wine glass and says, here's to new beginnings and building something real. Sitting there between them, I realize I've built something better than what I lost with Janet. These people showed up when it mattered and stuck around after the crisis passed. That's worth more than any amount of money Janet stole. The waiter brings our steaks, and we spend the rest of dinner talking about normal things like James's new girlfriend and Lisa's crazy shift at the hospital last week. Nobody mentions cancer or divorce or drama. It feels good to just exist without constantly processing trauma. 2 weeks later, I sit in Dr. Hendrix's office waiting for my 1-year cancer-free checkup results. He walks in with my chart and a smile that tells me everything before he says a word. My blood work is perfect. All my markers are exactly where they should be, and I'm healthy enough to move from quarterly screenings to annual checkups. He shakes my hand and says I'm one of his success stories, not just because the treatment worked, but because I handled the stress and trauma without letting it destroy my health. I thank him for reminding me back then that managing stress was part of my treatment, that surviving meant protecting my mental health as much as my physical health. He tells me to keep living my life and he'll see me in a year unless something changes. Walking out of that office feels like closing a chapter I never wanted to write in the first place. My phone buzzes with a text from Lisa, asking how it went, and I tell her I'm officially graduated to annual checkups. She sends back 3 celebration emojis and says we should do something fun this weekend. Saturday night, Lisa and I are cooking dinner at my place when she brings up the idea of moving in together. We've been dating for 8 months and she basically stays here 4 nights a week anyway. It makes sense financially and emotionally, but I still feel nervous about combining lives with someone after what happened with Janet. Lisa sees my hesitation and says we can keep talking about it. There's no rush. I tell her it's not about her. It's about me being scared to trust my judgment again after I got it so wrong before. She nods and says she understands, but also points out that I didn't get it wrong. Janet lied and hid who she really was. The difference with us is we've built trust slowly and honestly over months of showing up for each other. She knows my whole story, every ugly detail, and loves me anyway. That feels like the kind of foundation that actually lasts instead of crumbling the first time things get hard. I tell her yes, let's do it. Let's move in together. She smiles and kisses me and says she's not going anywhere. 2 years after Janet stole my cancer money, I'm sitting on my porch with Lisa watching the sunset turn the sky orange and pink. She's reading a book, and I'm just thinking about how different my life looks now compared to when I thought I might die. I'm alive, healthy, completely debt-free, and building a relationship based on honesty and respect instead of manipulation and enabling. Janet's choices led her to struggle as a single mom with a baby and whatever complicated situation she has with that kid's father. Tyler finally grew up through hard consequences, and last I heard from Marley, he's doing well with his HVAC career. I learned that survival isn't just about living through something, it's about refusing to let betrayal make you bitter and closed off. Life isn't perfect, and some scars don't fade completely. I still get anxious when I check my bank account, and I probably always will. But I'm genuinely content with where I am right now, and excited about where Lisa and I are going together. The sun drops below the horizon, and Lisa reaches over to hold my hand without looking up from her book. This is what winning actually looks like.